3 hours ago, I sat in a lawyer's office in Maple Ridge, Oregon, while my mother grabbed my wrist under the conference table and whispered that if I received even 1 penny from my grandmother's will, she would make my life a living hell. I believed her. My name is Rowan Whitaker. I'm 29 years old and I teach second grade at Redwood Creek Elementary School. For 3 months before my grandmother died, my mother made sure I could not see her. Not at the house, not at the hospice center, not even for 5 minutes to say goodbye. And when the funeral came, she stood in the front of the church telling everyone in town that I never bothered to visit. Today, in that same lawyer's office, my grandmother's will was read. The house, the savings, the jewelry, everything went to my mother. She smiled like grief itself had finally paid her back. But then the lawyer reached a second stack of papers, held together with a red clip, and calmly explained that 3 days before my grandmother died, she had signed something else. That was the moment my mother's face lost every trace of color. Across from me, my mother looks like she walked out of a realtor brochure. Diane Whitaker is 57, hair glossy, makeup soft, a black dress that fits perfectly, as if grief can be tailored. In her ears are a pair of pearl earrings that I recognize with a tight, nauseating certainty. I have seen those pearls on my grandmother's dresser my whole life. She used to put them in for church, for weddings, for the rare times she wanted to feel polished. Now, my mother wears them like they were always hers. Beside her sits Rick Dalton, 60, my stepfather. He has the thick hands of a man who builds things and expects them to hold. He keeps his arms folded like the table is something that might slide away. When his eyes land on me, there is no warmth, no apology, just a blank warning that says, "Do not make a scene." At the head of the table is Howard Callahan, 64, reading glasses perched low on his nose, a calm face that does not ask for anyone's approval. In front of him are 2 stacks of paper. One is thinner and clipped with a blue binder clip. Under it is a thicker stack with a red clip. The colors feel loud in the quiet room. I try to focus on small details, because it is easier than focusing on what my chest is doing. The faint smell of coffee, the soft hum of the air vent, a pen with the firm's name printed in gold sitting by my elbow. Anything except the fact that my grandmother is gone, and I am in this room with the people who kept me from her. My mother shifts in her chair, just slightly, like she is getting comfortable. Then she leans toward me, not enough for anyone else to notice, and her hand slides under the table. Her fingers close around my wrist, right where my pulse beats. Her grip is tight and precise, nails pressing into the thin skin. I do not pull away. I do not gasp. I learned a long time ago that reacting is what she wants. If I flinch, she gets to say I am dramatic. If I speak, she gets to call me disrespectful. So I hold still and stare at the wood grain in front of me like it is something I can anchor to. She leans closer, her perfume sharp, and her voice drops to a whisper meant for only one person. "If you get even 1 penny from my mother's will, I swear I will make your life a living hell." She releases me and sits back with a small, satisfied breath, like she just locked a door. Howard Callahan clears his throat. He does not look up at first. He simply opens the folder with the blue clip and begins, steady and professional, as if this is an ordinary appointment and not the moment that will define what my grandmother's last months meant. This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Whitaker. My mother's face smooths into an expression that could pass for grief if you did not know how she uses expressions like tools. Rick's mouth tightens in a way that looks like patience, but feels like hunger. Callahan reads the date, sometime in 2024. He turns pages with the same unhurried rhythm, the sound of paper louder than it should be. He names the property at 412 Maple Ridge Lane. He lists savings and investments totaling about $760,000. He mentions the family jewelry, the personal effects, the items to be distributed. Every line lands in the room and stays there. And I leave the remainder of my estate to my daughter, Diane Whitaker. My mother lets out a breath like she has been holding it since the funeral. Rick's eyes flick to my face, quick, as if checking whether I am going to do something stupid. I keep my gaze lowered. The bite marks from my mother's nails are already fading, but I can still feel the shape of her hand on my skin. My mother turns her head slightly toward me. She knew who was really there for her. The words are soft, almost tender, the way people speak when they want the room to believe they earned what they took. I taste something bitter in the back of my throat. I want to remind her that being there is not the same as being kind. I want to ask her what kind of daughter keeps a granddaughter from saying goodbye. But the air in the room feels too tight for any truth that is not sanctioned. Callahan reaches the end of the blue-clipped stack. For a second, I think that is it. I imagine walking out of this office and back into my classroom, pretending my hands do not shake when I pass out spelling tests. But Callahan does not close the folder. He sets the blue-clipped pages aside with care, like he's clearing space. His hand moves to the red clip. The room changes, not because anyone speaks, but because everyone notices that there is still more paper. Callahan's voice remains level. However, 3 days before Miss Whitaker passed away, she signed an additional document and established an irrevocable living trust. My mother's posture stiffens. Rick stops shifting his foot under the table. My own breath catches on something inside me. In my head, I hear my grandmother's voice from 6 months ago, thin but certain, like a promise she could not explain. No matter what happens, I've taken care of it. I stare at the red clip as if it might be the only solid object in the room, and I feel the past pulling at me, hard and immediate, dragging me back to the moment my grandmother said those words for the first time. The memory pulls me back to early December of 2025, to a Tuesday evening that felt ordinary at the time. I am sitting at my small kitchen table in my apartment, just 3 blocks from Redwood Creek Elementary School. The table is crowded with second-grade spelling tests, 37 of them. I have a red pen in my hand and a mug of tea that has already gone cold. Being a second-grade teacher in Maple Ridge does not make you rich. My salary covers rent, groceries, and gas for my 10-year-old Subaru. But most nights, I still feel lucky. Kids that age still believe adults can fix things. They still draw horses in the margins of spelling worksheets and tell you about their goldfish like it is the most important story in the world. Somewhere in the middle of grading the word neighborhood, my phone lights up on the table. Grandma. I answer before the second ring. Hi, sweetheart. Her voice sounds thinner than usual. Eleanor Whitaker has always had a steady voice. Even when she was in her 70s, she still sounded like the same woman who read Charlotte's Web to me 4 times in one summer. Grandma, are you okay? Oh, I'm fine, just tired tonight. I lean back in my chair and twist the red pen between my fingers. We talk about normal things. She asks about my class. I tell her about a boy who insists the plural of goose should be gooses. She laughs softly at that. She asks if the weather has turned cold yet. I tell her the rain started last week and probably will not stop until March. Then she asks if I am eating enough. That question has been her way of saying she loves me for as long as I can remember. There is a small pause on the line. I can hear her breathing, slow and careful. Then she says something that makes me set the pen down. No matter what happens, I have taken care of it. The words land oddly in the quiet kitchen. I straighten in my chair. Grandma, taken care of what? Another pause. I hear the faint sound of a television somewhere in the background. Oh, nothing you need to worry about. Her tone changes, light and casual. Tell me about your students again. I want to ask more. I want to ask why her voice sounds like she is holding something back. But that is the way Eleanor has always been when she decides a subject is closed. We talk for another 10 minutes. By the time we hang up, the tea in my mug is completely cold. The next morning, before I leave for school, I call her back. The phone rings twice. My mother answers. Mom is resting. Her voice is flat. Can I talk to her later? Don't call again. The line goes dead. I stand in my kitchen staring at the phone like it might explain what just happened. Over the next week, I call 11 times. 3 times the call goes straight to voicemail. 2 times my mother answers and hangs up without speaking. The rest of the time, the phone rings and rings until it stops. At first, I tell myself she is just busy. My mother has always had a complicated relationship with Eleanor. They argue, they stop speaking, then they act like nothing happened. But by the 8th day, something in my chest tightens. After school, I drive to Maple Ridge Lane. It takes about 40 minutes from my apartment. I know every turn of that road because my grandmother picked me up from school almost every afternoon when I was a kid. The house looks the same. Pale blue siding, porch swing by the front window. The porch light is off. That is wrong. Eleanor always leaves the porch light on until 10. I knock. No answer. I knock again, harder. Finally, the door opens. Rick Dalton fills the doorway. He is still wearing his work boots and a flannel jacket that smells faintly of sawdust. Your mom said no visitors. I just want to see Grandma. He does not move. She needs rest. Rick, please. His jaw tightens. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The door closes. A second later, I hear the deadbolt click. I stand on the porch for a moment, staring at the wood grain of the door, like I might be able to see through it. The next day, I call Mrs. Patterson. She has lived next door to my grandmother for more than 30 years. Her voice sounds surprised when she answers. Oh, honey, I thought you knew. Diane told everyone your grandma moved to a care facility up in Ridgewood. I look out my apartment window toward the gray Oregon sky. She didn't move. Oh, well, that is what Diane said. That night, I drive past the house again. The bedroom lamp with the yellow shade is on. I can see it clearly through the window. My grandmother is 15 feet away from where I am parked, but the front door might as well be a wall. In early January, my mother calls me once, just once. Mom is updating her estate plan. I grip the phone tighter. What does that mean? It means it is handled. Her voice turns colder. Focus on your little teaching job. The line goes quiet again. I sit on my couch, staring at the wall. Little teaching job. That phrase echoes in my head for days. 92 days. Every Sunday I write a card. Short things. I tell her about my students. I tell her about the rain. I tell her I tried making her peach cobbler recipe and burned the top. I mail them to Maple Ridge Lane, and I never know if she holds them or if they end up somewhere I cannot see. One night, I remember something Eleanor did years ago. She made me write down the number for her insurance policy on an index card, just in case. I dig through an old drawer until I find it. The next afternoon, after school, I call the insurance company. I sit on hold for nearly 40 minutes, listening to soft piano music that repeats every 90 seconds. Finally, a woman answers. After verifying a few details, she confirms something that makes my stomach drop. My grandmother is receiving hospice care. Cascade Valley Hospice Center, just outside Maple Ridge. I drive there immediately. The lobby smells like cleaning solution and flowers that are already starting to fade. The receptionist types my name into her computer. I'm sorry, you're not on the visitor list. My grandmother is Eleanor Whitaker. I understand, but the primary contact only approved certain visitors. Who is the primary contact? Diane Whitaker. Of course. I just want to see her for 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I walk back outside and sit in my car. The engine is off. Rain taps against the windshield. Almost an hour passes. Then a side door opens. A woman in blue scrubs walks out carrying a canvas bag. She looks tired, middle-aged, practical. She stops beside her car and glances across the parking lot. For a few seconds, our eyes meet through the windshield. There is a flicker of recognition in her face. Then it disappears. She gets into her car and drives away. I do not know her name yet. I just know that someone inside that building saw me, and the thought that my grandmother might be behind one of those windows while I sit helpless in a parking lot is enough to keep me awake most nights after that. Until one morning in early March when my phone rings before the sun is fully up. By the time I pick up, my hand is already shaking. The clock on my nightstand reads 6:58 a.m. The sky outside my bedroom window is still dark, the kind of organ gray that makes morning feel like it is happening behind a curtain. My phone screen lights up with my mother's name. I answer and sit up in bed, the sheet tangled around my legs. Mom? Mom passed this morning. The words are flat, delivered like a schedule change. I blink, waiting for the rest, waiting for something human. Funeral is Thursday. Then the line goes quiet. No pause for grief, no question about how I am holding up, no softening. I stare at the wall for a long moment after the call ends, my hand still gripping the phone like it might ring again with an explanation that makes sense. But the only thing that comes is the sound of my neighbor's shower turning on through the thin apartment wall and the distant hum of a truck on the road. I get dressed for work because I do not know what else to do. At Redwood Creek Elementary School, my classroom smells like crayons and dry erase markers. The fluorescent lights buzz faintly overhead. My students start filing in with backpacks and winter coats and stories they cannot wait to tell. One of them tugs at my sleeve. Miss Whitaker? I turn toward her and force my face into a smile. Good morning. My grandma is coming to visit this weekend. She says it like it is the best news in the world. I feel my throat tighten so fast it surprises me. That sounds really nice. The morning moves in chunks. Attendance, morning meeting, a math lesson I barely remember teaching. I keep my voice steady because that is what teachers do. I keep my hands busy because stillness is dangerous. During my lunch break, I sit alone at my desk and scroll back through my messages. I stop on the text that came in a week earlier, late February, from an unknown number. Your grandmother asks about you every day. I'm sorry. Please don't give up. I read it again. I read it slowly, like I might find a hidden instruction in the spaces between the words. I never replied because I did not know who it was, and because I did not want to give my mother any reason to tighten her grip. But I saved it. I took a screenshot. I stared at it on nights when I could not sleep, trying to imagine Eleanor lying in a hospice bed, asking about me while I sat outside in the parking lot like a stranger. After the final bell on Thursday, I drive to St. Andrew's Community Church. The parking lot is half full when I arrive, and the rain has shifted into a cold mist that clings to everything. The church looks exactly the way it always has: white siding, a steeple that points into the low sky, a row of stained glass windows that glow softly from inside. I sit in my car for a full minute with my hands on the steering wheel. Then I get out. Inside, the air smells like lilies and old carpet and the faint sweetness of coffee set up in the fellowship hall. People move in quiet clusters, hugging, murmuring, brushing tears away. In a town like Maple Ridge, a funeral is not just a goodbye, it is a social event with rules, and my mother understands rules better than anyone. The casket is at the front, beneath a spray of white flowers. Eleanor's name is printed on a simple program. I walk down the aisle and stop in the last row. I do not go up to the front. I do not want to see my grandmother's face framed by my mother's performance. Diane stands near the first pew, dressed in black, hair perfect, pearl earrings catching the light when she turns her head. She holds a tissue like a prop. Barbara Jensen and Joan Keller stand with a group of women near the side, their heads close together. They glance toward me and then away. Not cold exactly, just uncertain. Rick moves through the aisle like he owns the space. When he passes my row, he does not look at me. Don't cause trouble today. He keeps walking. My stomach turns, not because of fear, but because of the pure audacity of it. The same man who locked me out of Eleanor's house now wants me to behave. Diane steps forward to greet another set of church friends, her voice pitched perfectly for the room. I was with her every day until the end. She presses her hand to her chest. The people around her nod, murmuring sympathy. Then she turns slightly as if remembering something sad, and her eyes find mine from across the pews. She speaks louder. Rowan never even came to see her. A ripple goes through the room. It is subtle, but I feel it. Heads turn, eyes slide toward the back row. A few people look at me the way you look at someone who disappointed an old woman. My face stays still, because if it cracks, she wins twice. I keep my hands clasped in front of me. My fingernails dig into my palm hard enough to leave marks. The service begins. Hymns, prayers, a few stories about Eleanor that land like borrowed memories. Someone says she loved her family deeply, and I almost laugh at the irony, because love is not always what people think it is. When it ends, people stand and stream toward the front in a slow line. Diane positions herself like a receiving line at a wedding, accepting condolences, offering hugs, saying the right words. I stay where I am until the crowd thins. Then I step into the side aisle, intending to slip out quietly. That is when I feel a hand on my shoulder. Gentle, brief. I turn. A woman stands close enough that only I can hear her. She is wearing a dark blouse, not scrubs, but I recognize her tired eyes immediately. She is the woman from the hospice parking lot, Margaret Dawson. For a second, I cannot speak because my brain is trying to catch up to the fact that she is here. She leans in. She talked about you every day. Her voice is soft, controlled, like someone who has learned how to carry other people's grief without breaking. My mouth opens. Who are you? But she has already stepped back. She gives me one quick look, something that feels like reassurance and warning at the same time, and then she disappears through a side door before I can follow. I stand there with my heart pounding, staring at the door she went through. If my mother sees me talking to her, she will make it mean something ugly. If Rick sees me, he will block my way. So I do the only thing I can do. I leave. That night, my apartment feels too small. I sit at my kitchen table with the funeral program in front of me and the unknown text pulled up on my phone. And I keep thinking about Eleanor asking about me every day, while Diane told everyone I never bothered to visit. The next day, an email lands in my inbox. The sender is Callahan and Price Estate Law. The subject line is simple: Reading of Last Will and Testament. The appointment time is Friday at 2 p.m. I stare at the screen for a long moment. Then I close my laptop slowly, like I am setting something fragile down without knowing if it will shatter. On Friday, I leave school early. Not because my principal asks questions, but because I tell her I have a family legal appointment and she reads my face and simply nods. I drive downtown with both hands on the wheel, the email time repeating in my head like a bell. 2 o'clock. Callahan and Price sits above a hardware store on Main Street. I park 2 blocks away because the spot in front of the building is already taken, and the walk gives me time to breathe in the cold air and pretend I can control my heartbeat. Inside, the lobby is quiet. The receptionist recognizes my name before I finish saying it. She points me toward the conference room. When I open the door, everyone is already there. Diane is seated to the left, perfectly arranged, like she has been waiting to be photographed. Rick sits beside her, arms folded, eyes hard. Across the table, Linda Carver clutches her purse in her lap, like she is holding on to something that might disappear if she loosens her grip. Near the window sit Barbara Jensen and Joan Keller, close enough that their shoulders almost touch, their faces unreadable. Howard Callahan sits at the head of the table with a thick folder in front of him. I notice the 2 binder clips again, blue on top, red underneath, the colors too bright against the dark wood. I take the last empty chair at the far end. My palms are damp. I wipe them against my skirt under the table and sit on my hands. Callahan looks around the room, calm and steady. Thank you for coming. Diane does not wait for him to continue. She leans toward me across the table, not hiding it this time, and her fingers close around my wrist again. Her nails press in just enough to remind me she can. If you make a scene, you will regret it. I keep my eyes on her face. I let her see that I am not looking down. Callahan's gaze flicks briefly to my wrist. Something shifts in his expression, small but real, like he is filing away a detail he expected to see. He begins reading. The first pages are exactly what my mother wants the room to hear. The 2024 will, the house at 412 Maple Ridge Lane, the savings and investments, around $760,000, the jewelry, the personal effects. It is all written in clean, legal language that feels strange against the memories I have of that house. The porch swing, the yellow lampshade in the bedroom, my grandmother's hands smoothing my hair when I cried. Callahan reads the final line of the older document, and I leave the remainder of my estate to my daughter, Diane Whitaker. Diane lets out a breath and sits back, satisfied. Rick's knee shifts under the table like a private celebration. Linda keeps staring at the tabletop, her mouth tight. Barbara and Joan look at me, and in their eyes I see not cruelty, but doubt. Doubt planted by my mother and watered for months. Diane stands up, tissue in hand, and turns toward the room like she is delivering a speech at the church. I gave up everything to take care of my mother. Her voice is warm, practiced. She turns slightly, aiming the next part at me without looking directly at me. Some people didn't even bother to visit. I feel heat rise in my face. My throat tightens. I think of the hospice receptionist telling me I am not on the list. I think of Rick locking the door. I think of my grandmother behind that yellow lamp, 15 feet away, unreachable. Diane lowers herself back into her chair and smooths her skirt. She touches the pearl earrings lightly, like they are a crown she earned. Callahan does not move. He does not react. He simply sets the blue clipped pages aside. Then he places his hand on the red clip. The room quiets in a different way. Even Diane's breathing seems to pause. Callahan's voice stays even. Mrs. Whitaker executed an irrevocable living trust 3 days before her death. Diane's head snaps up. That's impossible. Callahan slides the red clipped pages forward and begins reading as if the interruption never happened. I feel the table under my fingertips, solid and cold. My heartbeat is loud enough that I wonder if anyone else can hear it. Callahan reads the name of the trust, the date, the signature block. Then he reads the first item. The trust designates assets to be held for the sole benefit of Rowan Whitaker. Diane's chair scrapes against the floor as she moves, halfway rising before she catches herself. Callahan continues, unhurried. The savings and investment accounts are to be transferred into the trust. He reads the property next. The residence at 412 Maple Ridge Lane is to be titled to the trust, with Rowan Whitaker as beneficiary. The air in the room feels thin. My mother's face drains of color so quickly it looks unreal. Diane's voice comes out sharper, desperate. She was on morphine. Callahan looks up for the first time. A physician certified Mrs. Whitaker was mentally competent. He turns a page. The documents were notarized. Diane's hands gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles whiten. She would never do this. Rick shifts in his chair, glancing at Diane like she is seeing her from a distance. Callahan's eyes return to the pages. His voice does not change. The witness is here. He nods toward the door. It opens. Margaret Dawson steps in. She is in plain clothes today, but her posture is the same as the day in the hospice parking lot. Tired eyes, steady hands, a calm that comes from walking into hard rooms for a living. She takes the chair Callahan gestures to beside him. Diane stares at her as if she's a threat she cannot name. Maggie's voice is clear, professional. Eleanor Whitaker was fully alert the day she signed those documents. Diane shakes her head, too fast. Who are you? Maggie does not look at Diane for long. She looks at the room, at the people who need to hear facts more than opinions. She told me her phone had been taken. Diane makes a sound like a laugh, but it breaks halfway. That is a lie. Maggie's expression stays level. She asked me to contact Rowan from my personal phone. I feel my stomach drop as the unknown text flashes in my mind, the words I reread like a prayer. Callahan opens a slim envelope and removes a single photocopied page. He holds it with 2 fingers, careful. Mrs. Whitaker requested that a passage from her journal be read aloud. Diane's voice rises. Those journals mean nothing. Callahan begins reading anyway. My daughter Diane has kept Rowan away from me. Even in Howard Callahan's voice, the words sound like hers. If Rowan ever reads this, I want her to know I never believed the lies. Barbara's hand flies to her mouth. Joan's face tightens, her eyes fixed on my mother with something cold and final. Linda closes her eyes like she cannot bear the weight of confirmation. Rick's chair shifts back a little, then a little more. He leans away from Diane without realizing it. My mother stands so fast her chair nearly tips. You manipulated her. The accusation lands on me like she can still make the room obey her. I keep my voice steady. I didn't even know about the trust until 5 minutes ago. Callahan turns slightly toward me. Miss Whitaker. I feel every eye on my face. My throat burns. My wrist still aches from my mother's grip. I straighten my shoulders. I accept the trust. The words sound strange coming out of my mouth, not triumphant, just true. I look at Callahan, and I'd like to change the locks at Maple Ridge Lane this week. Diane's breathing turns ragged. Rick does not touch her. Barbara and Joan do not look at me with doubt anymore. The room sits in a heavy silence that feels like the moment after a storm breaks, when the air is still adjusting to what just happened. Callahan gathers the papers into a neat stack, and I realize I am holding my breath again, waiting to find out what comes next. By the next Monday, Maple Ridge was already talking. I am back in my classroom at Redwood Creek Elementary School, writing the date on the whiteboard while kids drag chairs and argue over who gets the purple marker. My voice comes out steady when I take attendance. My hands do not shake when I collect homework. It is not that nothing happened, it is that the world keeps moving, and for the first time in a long time, I am moving with it, instead of being dragged. By Friday, Maple Ridge has done what small towns always do. It has talked. I do not tell anyone. I do not need to. The story leaves the conference room on its own. It rides in the pauses people take when they greet my mother at the grocery store. It travels in the way Barbara Jensen stops calling Diane back. It spreads through church pews and coffee lines and the hardware store downstairs from Callahan and Price. Barbara calls me on Sunday afternoon. Her voice is thick with something that sounds like apology and grief folded together. Roan, I owe you an apology. I sit at my kitchen table with a stack of lesson plans in front of me, the same table where I graded spelling tests when my grandmother called that December night. It is okay. It is not. She takes a breath. We believed her. We listened to Diane at the funeral and we believed her. I press my fingers against my forehead, not to stop tears, but to keep my face from tightening. Barbara continues, quieter now. Eleanor kept your cards. All of them. She had them in a little basket by her bed. Joan and I saw them. The words hit me like a soft punch. A basket by her bed, her hands holding the paper I sent. The thought loosens something in my chest that has been clenched for months. Joan calls later that same day. She does not waste time. We told Diane we will not be attending anything at her house again. I picture my mother standing in her kitchen with her perfect hair, waiting for people to show up like they always did, and I feel a strange calm. Not joy, not revenge, just a quiet sense of the world correcting itself. Linda Carver shows up at my apartment the following weekend. She looks older than she did in the conference room, as if one afternoon of truth aged her a year. She holds out a paper bag. I brought you muffins. I did not know what else to bring. We sit on my couch. Linda twists her hands in her lap. I always felt something was off, she says. Diane was too controlling, too defensive, but she is my sister, and I kept telling myself it was not my business. I look at her for a long moment. Linda does not ask for forgiveness. She just looks tired. It became my business the second she kept me away. Linda nods, eyes wet, and we sit in the quiet for a minute. Over the next few weeks, I hear things without asking. Rick starts sleeping in the guest room. Word gets back to me that the arguments have gotten loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I do not celebrate it. I just file it away as one more consequence of choices made in the dark. Diane calls the office of Callahan and Price twice. Callahan does not take the calls. She calls other attorneys in the next county. She does not hear what she wants to hear. The few she manages to speak with tell her the same thing in different words. Challenging it would be expensive, difficult, and uncertain. One evening in early April, my phone rings, and her name lights up the screen. For a second, I let it ring. My body still remembers being 8 years old, listening to her footsteps, trying to predict what mood would walk into the room. Then I answer. Rowan? Her voice sounds different, not softer exactly, but thinner, as if the confidence has been scraped away. Can we start over? I look out my window at the wet street. A dog is pulling its owner toward a patch of grass. Somewhere, a car door shuts. Life going on. I keep my voice level. I love you, but I do not trust you. There is silence. I can hear her breathing, uneven. like she wants to cry or yell and cannot decide which will work. "You are my daughter." "I am." Another pause. Then she tries for the tone I recognize from childhood, the one that turns her into the victim and makes everyone else the problem. "I did what I had to do." I do not argue. I do not list the ways she kept my grandmother from me. I already said those things in that conference room, and the truth does not need to be repeated to stay true. I am not doing this anymore. I end the call before she can find a new angle. 2 days later, Callahan's office confirms the paperwork that allows me to take possession of the house. A locksmith meets me at 412 Maple Ridge Lane on a rainy Thursday afternoon. He's polite, quick, all business. He changes the locks while I stand on the porch, holding a ring of new keys that feels heavier than it should. When he leaves, the porch is quiet. I put the key in the lock and turn it. The door opens with a familiar creak, and for a moment I just stand there in the entryway. The air inside smells like old wood, paper, and lemon cleaner. It is the smell of my childhood, the smell of my grandmother's careful routines. I step inside and close the door behind me. The house is still. No television, no voices, just the soft tick of a clock somewhere deeper in the rooms. I move through the living room first. The couch is the same. The crocheted blanket is folded over the back like Eleanor always kept it. On the wall is a photo of her younger self, smiling in front of a library shelf, hair pinned back, eyes bright. I walk into the kitchen. The curtains with tiny yellow flowers hang over the sink. The drawer where she kept her measuring spoons is slightly open, as if she meant to close it and got distracted. Upstairs, her bedroom is exactly as I remember. The yellow lampshade on the nightstand, the bookshelf against the far wall, and on the shelf beside the window, lined up neatly, are 14 journals, dark green covers, numbered in her handwriting. I crouch in front of them and slide the last one out. My hands are steady. My breathing is not. I sit on the floor with my back against the bed and open to the final pages. On the last page, in her looping cursive, are the words I did not know I needed. "If you're reading this, it means my plan worked." I stare at the sentence until the letters blur. Then I press the journal against my chest and let the tears come. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. I am not crying because of money. I am crying because she fought for me from a bed she could not leave, because she found a way to say goodbye when she was not allowed to do it face to face, because she refused to let my mother decide what my relationship with her meant. By June, I move into the house slowly, a few boxes at a time. Linda helps me carry a lamp and an old set of dishes. Barbara brings a casserole and leaves it on the counter without making a big deal out of it. I keep teaching at Redwood Creek Elementary. My students do not need to know the details of my life. They just need a teacher who shows up and tells them they can handle hard things. In the evenings, I read a few pages of Eleanor's journals. Some are funny, some are sad, some are complicated in a way that makes my throat tighten. She loved my mother. That is clear, but she also saw what my mother could do when she wanted control more than connection. One warm night in late July, I sit on the porch swing with a glass of iced tea. The street is quiet. The sun hangs low over the trees. The wood beneath me creaks gently with each small movement. For the first time in years, I feel something I did not know I had been missing: solid ground. If you have ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, especially family, I'd love to hear what that looked like for you.